so little that sort of had to have. Anyway, who's in here? What's up there, News Nebraska? Share this to a few folks real quick. But just gonna try to keep it light for this show. Switch it up just a little bit. Hey there, Friday already. Yes, sir. What's up, safety man? Damn. Anyway, so like I said, for tonight's show, we're deviating away from the norm a little bit. What's up there, John Davies? And we're gonna talk about urban agriculture. Some of you may know I like to garden. I'm into sustainability, all the possibilities that this brings with it. We're going to touch on that here in a little bit. Like I said, had a somewhat unexpected phone call of very serious, not very serious, but kind of serious personal nature. So I apologize for my tardiness here tonight. But you know, I'm a little sidetracked now. But like I said, we're gonna talk about a little bit lighter stuff tonight. So tonight's all in fun. Tonight's a fun show. Not too much seriousness. Got a couple things that I'm gonna touch on. Some constantly changing events. But all in all, it's going to be a fairly light show. Yes, it is always fun. So, previously, I mentioned the city of Elkhart. I believe it's Cooper v. Rizzuto. Anyway, this dude's suing. City of Elkhart withheld a bunch of public records that implicated an officer who was, doing up things with informants and basically doctoring paperwork to get convictions, utilizing these informants. The ensuing cover-up while these two individuals set in prison for a robbery, some things like that. As well as, I believe there was some like I said, sexual stuff with informants going on. And anyway, they withheld all this paperwork. Then they released it not too long ago. And they went through all this stuff with that. Basically now, the city of Elkhart tried to sue to essentially get an injunction to force the city or the South Bend Tribune, which has a sort of a business deal worked out with ProPublica, to where South Bend Trib reports on local corruption and things of this nature. And ProPublica is basically paying for it all because it's part of their initiative to expose corruption and shit like this in local government. Anyway, so the city of Elkhart is trying to get South Bend Tribune, or they were trying to get South Bend Tribune they're trying to force them through the courts to release, all these documents about, their investigation into the city of Elkhart. And this judge refused to grant it. And essentially, City of Elkhart's claiming there was some sort of conspiracy against them by the newspaper. Judge ruled it was not supported by evidence. Would be the takeaway quote from that. There is no evidence to support a conspiracy. Where the South Bend Tribune is reporting the news, even the horrible shit. Conspiracy, says the City of Elkhart. So this case, where they did this to this dude, and he's set in prison for a crime he didn't commit, while they withheld public documents. Anyway. Yeah, Cindy. Said you're in San Diego. Sorry. Reconnecting. Sometimes the Wi-Fi is better. Sometimes the Wi-Fi sucks and the phone internet's better. It's like every other Friday it picks one to reconnect and buffer with, and the other one it works just fine. It's never the same. Yes, John. No beard, no hair. Spring's coming up. Trying to get acclimated to the warmer weather that's coming up. So not going to be as cold out. Don't need the beard, strictly for functionality. Any damage with the high winds? Yeah, I think there was a little bit of stuff here and there, but not too bad. Nothing too terrible that I heard of. When it's really crazy, I got a good part in my yard that I can sort of tell. But nothing more than the average, tree limbs falling loose and stuff like that. I don't think there was any real damage from high winds. I didn't hear about anything, at least in any of my local community pages where people post about stuff like this. But it was pretty windy. I went somewhere one day, walked around it, and it was. I've just seen a meme where it's the air hurts my face. Why do I live somewhere where the air hurts my face? It's one of those days. Why do I live somewhere where the air hurts my face? It's worse with no beard. But, oh yeah. Got this other thing I was gonna talk about real quick before we get into all this stuff. All right, so in Martinsville, Indiana. Okay. Yeah, Morgan County. There is a chief of police named Matt D. Long, who on February 27th was charged with theft and official misconduct, both Class D felonies, which I would presume would have him charged with a crime from at least a few years back, because he would be under the old law. Now we are at level 6 through level 1 through 6. Murder being a 1, theft being a level 6. He's charged with theft and official misconduct as a D felony. So I'm assuming this is a little bit older, but I'm not quite sure. Anyway, the articles that I read or that I read about this all said that he was he turned himself in and he posted bond. However, if you go to mycase.indiana.gov and look up Matt D. Long, this would be 2370 Legendary Drive in Martinsville, Indiana 46151. That Matt D. Long with a cause number 55D001-1902-F60000319. Anyway, pretty interesting because they seem to be pursuing it quite vigorously, which could potentially be for show, but for whatever reason, they're definitely doing it right. The local prosecutor's office has sought, recusals from judges. They're covering their bases to prosecute this chief of police. Pretty interesting. You don't typically see this. Whatever he did, he stole money from the wrong person to be charged with a felony in Indiana as a public servant. Sort of automatically triggers what's called official misconduct. It's basically where you commit a crime while you're in office. So if you're alleged to commit theft, you're alleged to commit a sort of secondary official misconduct charge automatically. Yeah, a cop that steals. Who would have thought? Anyway, so there's that. This was, I believe he was charged February 27th. So this is sort of new and developing as we speak. But pretty big deal. It's going to potentially set somewhat of a precedent. You don't often see the chief of police prosecuted for theft. And it's a D felony, which is essentially, I haven't had too much time to dig into this yet. I just found it this morning. But it would be $750 to $50,000, I think, up to $50,000. So, I mean, this dude could be charged with stealing as much as, $49,999 or $50,000 or whatever it would be. And it only be a D felony. So he could be charged with stealing up to 50 grand. I haven't, like I said, looked too much into the finer details of it. I just know that he's charged and everything. His initial hearing is March 15th, so in about 2 weeks. Anyway. So basically, he stole some weed from the evidence locker. Yeah. He stole an ounce of weed from the evidence locker with a street value of $50,000. Maridosia, Illinois Chief of Police, relieved of duty due to allegations he put a gun in his wife's mouth and said he would happily kill her. Jesus fucking Christ, Huckleberry. By the way, what's up there, Huckleberry Auditor? Good to see you. That's a fucking crazy story, man. Maridosia, Illinois. Never heard of it, but assuming it's one of those smaller towns with a little bit more of a laxed duty that tends to promote dereliction and psychopathic behavior. Jesus Christ. Chief of police stuck a gun in his wife's mouth. That's wild. All right, now that's also a rarity. The state police seeking charges. Occasionally it happens. It's awesome when it does, but it maybe this is a new thing. It's catching on. Maybe they're gonna start prosecuting these motherfuckers every time they do something fucked up like they do everybody else, especially when it's something like this. But here in Indiana, state police doesn't really look into too much, from what I understand. You know, it's a rarity. You know, the common practices by the locals, never would have become common if the state police were, doing their due diligence and prosecuting people left and right. Chicago State Police, usually go after dirty guns. Selective blowback, yeah, controlled chaos. That's kind of what I think about it a lot of times when I see these stories. Is they steal from you all the time. It's like they, this chief of police. It's likely who he stole from. He pissed somebody off, and now they're feeding you to the wolves. But that sort of reaffirms society's belief that everything's in working order, and the system, the system doesn't need any tweaking. Everything's just fine. The police have prosecuted one of their own. But it's normally sacrifice a victim for the greater good kind of thing. Somebody's got to be the face of accountability, and that's typically what it is puppet show, or the effects thereof. It's not nearly as many police are prosecuted as should be. Even if you times the number that you see happening on the best day by 10. It's an interesting thing. Yeah, it's they're the police are constantly on this I feared for my safety kind of thing, and I have PTSD. So at one point, more than one point, I've explained this to police officers, and more often than not, it's well, are you a combat veteran? No, I'm not a combat veteran of the war that you were in. But it's, that's the end of it. Not a combat veteran? Well, then how do you have PTSD? Only combat veterans have PTSD. Statistically, the number one demographic for PTSD are military and law enforcement wives. The numbers don't lie. So the audacity for that shit is just, you're in fear for your safety. You're like literally documented as the violent demographic. We as a society have chose to arm peace officers, send them into drug wars, shit like that. Yeah, I think around. urban combat veterans. I like that. Yeah, for real. Anyway, so let's get through this. Excuse me. I'll make myself a little bit of a workspace here. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. So, I ran for my local Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisory Board. Unfortunately, I lost. However, I'm the number 2, so if something happens to the first guy that he resigns or is unable to do it or some reason, I get the slot. Anyway, and I would not. What would they have paid you? I actually don't get paid. It's a volunteer thing. Sort of. This is one of those things where you're doing it because you give a shit. I think there's a per diem for, like, if I have some costs that I can prove are related to my position on the board. If I was on the board, but not a lucrative position per se. Anyway, so here's the Fort County Soil and Water Conservation District little newsletter here for December 2018. Here's a picture of me in the old driving cap at the lake, and a little bio here. Here's 2 of the other guys that were running. This is the guy that won. This is the dude I was going to vote for. This is another guy. These are both teachers. So we did these little candidate responses kind of thing, where they asked us a bunch of questions and we did written responses. So Saturday, February 23rd, I went and did this breakfast and the election, a couple annual meetings. By the way, not a complete loss at all. Didn't feel like a loser. Had a great time. Wonderful breakfast. The guy that catered is an amazing cook. As well as I got to meet a lot of new people, networked a good bit. From what I understand, it was a pretty close race from what I hear. As well as a lot of the people that I thought were going to show up to be able to vote weren't able to, or for whatever reason didn't make it. So a lot of the votes came from my answers to these questions and my bio and short little speech that I gave here at the little meeting. So not bad at all. Met a bunch of agricultural business minded people. They're more row crop farmers, things of this nature. Um, that were, they're from the older crowd, but they're understanding the importance of urban agriculture. And, essentially, it was kind of cool because the older guy is a teacher. He's got plenty of experience, but the race was between us two younger gentlemen. Um, so it sort of showed a willingness to embrace, fresh ideas, new faces from the younger generation, and something that's typically, viewed at or viewed as requiring decades of experience. Typically, soil and water conservation districts are individuals that grew up in an agriculture lifestyle, which until more recently was not as urban. This was more of a rural thing. Specifically here in Indiana, farms are out in the country. They're usually not in the city. However, I live in the city. I live on a third of an acre. Urban farming, more than your everyday average backyard garden, is essentially a segue for people that live in town and aren't familiar with farming or agricultural practices to learn more and in turn by learning about how important agriculture is, more so able to appreciate things that go into it and pay a little bit more attention to different regulatory processes and things of this nature. Soil and water conservation district specifically is a very important part of a local government, but it's not, as widely known as, say, city council or the prosecutor's office or something of this nature. However, it affects your everyday lifestyle much more than your average prosecutor's office does. If you're not breaking the law, prosecutor's office, sheriff's department, things of this nature are not going to affect your everyday life as much as something like stormwater, and the management of it, and whether or not you pay a fee, or if your city has ordinances promoting urban agriculture to get rid of impervious surfaces so that rainwater doesn't flood the sewage system. All kinds of things like this. New and developing technologies make it possible for urban people to do small farming practices right in their backyard. A lot of the things that typically you would have seen out in the country have been downscaled and researched and studied to the point that the average person can do a lot more on their small in-town property than they would have been able to 20, 30, 40 years ago. However, not much different than it would have been 100, 150 years ago, if you really think about it. We've really deviated away from the norm, and this is sort of doing what comes naturally, that we stopped sort of, years and years ago. It was normal for everyone to have a garden in their yard. This is no longer a normal activity. It's seen as something that is a hobby. Who has time to garden? Well, who has time to do a lot of things? Who has money to grocery shop? Who has time to go grocery shop? You could grow your own food. Things like this are not viewed the same way anymore, and it's sort of a community atmosphere that has to develop before all of these things can really, take effect. Sorry, lost my thought there a little bit. check this out again. Yeah, like the collecting rainwater thing. A lot of times I've seen a lot of places. I've heard a lot of stories. This is a fairly normal thing where this is it's banned, outlawed. It's typically city or county ordinances or something of that nature, to where they don't want you to collect rainwater. However, the collection and use of rainwater sort of diminishes the output into the sewer system. The more rainwater you use on your property, the less rainwater you're draining into the sewage system, the less wear and tear is being put on pumps and machinery and stuff like that. If it's not too much of a flow, you don't get flooding and things of this nature. It's anything you read about urban agriculture, this is typically like the secondary argument. First argument being the health and social benefits of community gardens and urban farms and things of this nature. Having fresh produce and non-processed foods readily available to locals being number one. But your number two is usually stormwater management. Things like rooftop gardens, your planter boxes, any kind of plant matter is going to soak up water. By collecting rainwater, you're also basically removing it from where it would drain to and keeping it on the property to use as you need it until it's gone. So, areas like downtowns that have a lot of parking lots and, it's all roads, there's a lot of buildings and stuff, rooftop gardens and stuff like this are great for that. And a lot of this can be accomplished with the same amount of money that they're going to spend on not dealing with the rainwater this way. Which, by the way, rainwater is a natural resource that typically most cities and places that have the mindset that you can't collect rainwater and they're just going to pour it into a hole in the ground are charging you fees in your taxes, whether it's on your water bill or your trash bill or some other way, however they word it or term it. They're charging you to sort of deal with this. So that they can pay to maintain old, outdated sewer systems and drainage systems that can't handle the, when a lot of our infrastructure in America was built, we had less population, less development, less people, less impervious surface. There was less parking lots. There were less roads. There were less buildings. There were less things that did not soak up water. There were a whole lot more things that soaked up water. We've expanded and slowly grown more and more and more over time to where a lot of the old, outdated infrastructure cannot handle the amount of water and things of this nature that's being output by the population that we have now. in most urban areas. So most cities and smaller areas would do well by basically promoting things of this nature to deal with that excess water that higher populations would basically create for infrastructure that was built for smaller populations, decades ago or whatever. As well as, like I said, there's all the other benefits of, community gardens, urban farming, municipal gardens, private gardens, all of these things, rooftop access, like your community gardens, rooftop access gardens, things of this nature. These could be used for people that don't have the ability to garden per se. For instance, people that rent their homes, that may be younger, people that live in apartment complexes, stuff like this, where the individual, though they may live there, they may have some sort of restrictions on what they're allowed to do on the property because they don't actually own the property. There's plenty of individuals like these in every community that would, if it was set up properly, and they had the ability, possibly volunteer in exchange for fresh produce, things of this nature. Some sort of program could be worked out. But if you had the space to do these kinds of things, like I said, on rooftops or in community or green space areas located within different neighborhoods throughout your town, the volunteer base will sort of create itself, because there's people that aren't able to do that kind of thing where they live, that they'll gladly go do somewhere else for it. Like, for instance, myself, I even have a yard that I garden in. Eventually I'm going to cover my whole yard as much as I can and still have room for my dogs to run around. And I would more than welcome the 22,000 square feet of rooftop on this nursing home that's about 100 feet from my house. Fair exchange. But it's, urban agriculture is a wonderful thing. It's gaining traction every day. And like I said, we're going to talk about some of the reasons why. I'm also going to more about self-education. So there is let's see. This is from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. It's from July 2014. And it is called Integrating Urban Farms into the Social Landscape of Cities. That looks like this. It's fairly lengthy. It's about 44 pages, but it's pretty good stuff. Then we have one second. Anyway, this is from the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education from the USDA. It is the Guide to Starting a Locally Scaled Local Foods Cooperative. This one's a little bit shorter, 20 pages. This is from the Cornell University Cooperative Extension, partnered with Mohawk Harvest Cooperative Extension. like I said, as well as with the USDA Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program. Go ahead. Get you the rest of these real quick. Also here, something called the Overcoming Barriers to Cultivating Urban Agriculture. This was, I think this is about like 160 something pages. Pretty thick, but it's a combination of stuff. Anyway, it's got, so this is from Real Estate Law Journal, Volume 41, Fall of 2012, from Thomson Reuters. And it's basically zoning and land use planning. This is good stuff for if you're a community organizer or you're into a nonprofit or something of that nature and you want to sort of get in on the planning process with your city. 1 second, let me check these real quick. Boston estimates they lose 30% of fresh water through their own pipes underground. No shit, 30%. I believe it. I think Boston's one of the ones with a really good gardening program as far as community gardens and stuff. See more and more community gardens popping up all over. For the longest time, I had no clue you could play if you can get so much. You mean like talking about like a land trust, land bank, easement, tenure, adopt plots. There's a lot of East Coast. Well, gosh, is it 40? Can't tell. Yeah, they all look the same to me, John. Hi, Regina. Anyway, so getting back to this, they also got a this, like I said, this is all came together, 160 pages. There's a Burlington Urban Agriculture Task Force from Burlington, Virginia. It's from September 2012. This has basically got all kinds of stuff as far as, like I said, helping you work with your city to sort of create the ordinances and different things to look into, so you can work with your city officials. Zoning and ordinances are very important if you're trying to do urban agriculture, because you have things like setbacks, your land use, zoning and whatnot. You may potentially need a variance based upon if you want to build a greenhouse somewhere, such as on the side of your house. Anyway, then if you're into it, there's draft ordinances here. Maybe try your hand at writing your own, centered around urban agriculture. Anybody can write an ordinance. You just need a local representative to sponsor it. Once it's sponsored, they can read it, vote on it, amend it, all those kinds of things, potentially pass it. or spoiler, probably gonna try my hand at this. Anyway, so we also have a national policy and legal analysis network to prevent childhood obesity. It's from the Public Health Law and Policy Organization, establishing land use protections for community gardens. This is from September of 2009. However, it's got some pretty good stuff in it. This is also, model comprehensive language for zoning ordinances, adopted uses, things of this nature. I'll get to this one in a second. There. Alright, so this is October 12th, 2017. Regulatory Practices of Urban Agriculture, a Connection to Planning and Policy. This is from the Journal of American Planning Association. I believe this one's got some really good stuff in it. Yeah, this has got a lot of good stuff. As you can see by this map, they get data from across the country, various urban agriculture operations of different sizes and methods, from New York, Philadelphia, Boston, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., to Kentwood, Michigan, Sheboygan, Wisconsin, Downers Grove Village, Illinois, to Vegas, to Lehigh, Utah, to Houston, to Detroit, to Cleveland, to Seattle, to Portland, to Denver, to Castle Rock, Colorado, to Galveston, Texas, North Carolina, all over the place, Florida, all over the place. Basically, use these resources to sort of get a good bit of research material. I found plenty of stuff on grants and technical assistance, marketing assistance. This is from the USDA. This is, I believe, 2012, February 2016, Urban Agriculture Toolkit. I think this is maybe 20, 30 pages here. About 26, 27 pages. Anyway, this thing's got all kinds of great stuff in it. Soil quality, water, accessing capital and financing, infrastructure, financing infrastructure for indoor growing environments, production strategies, applying for federal grants, market development, training and mentoring, safety and security, as well as all kinds of other stuff. Anyway, we're going to touch more on the grants here in a minute. This is another one that's really good. Lots of good information in here. This is from the University of Missouri Extension. It's from June 12th. The Division of Applied Social Sciences, Urban Agriculture, Best Practices and Possibilities. This has got stuff about city ordinances and zoning regulations, access to water, access to capital for funding, brownfields and contaminated soils, food policy councils, health food access, local food system infrastructure, from aggregation and distribution to processing. A lot of this touches on specific Missouri data, but has a sort of general use as well. Anyway, all right. Check this here real quick. Good night, John. Good to see you. See you next time. Try my hand at beekeeping to help garden and local farmers. Always through summer disease. No, Jenny, I have not got into bees yet. I'm hoping to be able to do this year. It's one of the things that sort of I've read about oftentimes is an obstacle for individuals that get into various aspects of urban agriculture, like animal husbandry or beekeeping, or more than just your everyday average backyard garden. Like for instance, if I do bees, I can have 2 hives, and there's basically all these restrictions on how high, how low, how close it can be to a fence, things of this nature. But long story short, I can do chickens, I can do bees, I can do a lot of stuff. The majority of it, according to my city ordinances, has to be in the exact same spot in my backyard. So it sort of creates the potential to force a choice if I want to do one or the other, because it's made doing both somewhat difficult. Chickens eat bees. Put bees and chickens right next to each other, it's just sort of a lost cause. I'm also want to do some greenhouse stuff to expand what I'm doing with my gardening and whatnot. This would also need to be in the exact same spot in the backyard. So it's created a bit of an obstacle where my ordinances in my local city are not sort of constructed to welcome this out of the box sort of thinking. In fact, it's something I'm likely going to have to pay to participate in, and have to jump through a bunch of hoops for at this moment, which is fairly regular. But like I said, at the moment, I don't have much information on bees because I've sort of put it off because I know I'm going to have to go through a bunch of shit with the city to accomplish this, and I just didn't want to go through the hassle to even try yet. But I would like to do bees eventually, as well as chickens, aquaponics, the whole get up. Secret to a happy life is no neighbors. Yeah. Well, maybe. Could be right. I do enjoy the country. But I don't know. There's something about LaPorte, Indiana I like. Enough parks and lakes here that I can go enjoy the nature thing, and then come home to the normal everyday urban lifestyle. Anyway, so the average supermarket item travels over 1,400 miles to get to its destination. And basically, that money leaves your local community. Urban farming, urban agriculture, community gardens, things of this nature. They keep those dollars local. In turn, the individual, the consumer, saves that money that would ordinarily be spent on transportation cost. They're able to buy a product that's just as good, just as organic, just as non-GMO, just as fresh, and basically at a lower price. And they know they're supporting a local agricultural producer. In turn, these dollars that are spent locally stay local, which in turn are then again potentially spent locally, which sort of stimulates the local economy. Enough people doing this, potentially it creates jobs, things of this nature. Then, like I said, with the stormwater management, any cost that are offset for the city, then in turn could be spent on other things like, your roads, your sidewalks, your parks, things of this nature. One second. And we're back. All right. Where was I? Anyway, so the whole concept basically is that there's so many different benefits to this on a personal and on a much, much larger as far as municipal level. Nationally, the reverberations as far as educational possibilities, essentially having fresh, healthy food around just all around affects everything positively. Children that eat fresh, healthy foods tend to be more active and learn faster. You know, um, it the growing body needs fresh produce, needs foods with no preservatives, things of this nature. Things like community gardens, urban orchards, they provide this healthy aspect, as well as they teach sustainability. Um, it's good for children to learn about food growing up, to learn about gardening, to learn about providing for themselves. Um, and this is something that is a sort of lifelong learning experience. You can never, there's so many different plants and different agriculture and cultivation methods. You'd never be able to learn anything. This is something that once you develop this desire to learn about, you could learn endless amounts of information. You never be able to learn it all. Uh, However, this is something that uh, could turn into a career, and it's a career choice that there are plenty of educational institutions for. So teaching children at a young age has a sort of investment into the future aspect later. Um, as humans, we're ever expanding. We've gotten to the point that we can't garden out anymore. We're having to garden up. Um, Rooftop gardens, gardens on walls, inside of the buildings that we've cleared forest to build. We're now growing trees. Um, so there's definitely a future in the innovation, research, and development side of urban agriculture. This is the future because there is no other way for humans to survive other than to figure out how to grow food in, around, on top of all these things that we've cleared the earth and poured concrete to build. We are now starting to do these things out of survival. We have taken to literally growing food inside of buildings, because we can't grow it in the dirt everywhere anymore. There's not enough. We have what's called a soil and water conservation district for a reason. We're literally conserving soil. That's dirt. The dirt blows away. You heard of the Dust Bowl? That's what that was about. Was the dirt blowing away. The Soil and Water Conservation District was actually created because of this. Soil and water conservation efforts were essentially created because of the Dust Bowls. You kind of need soil or some sort of other growing medium. Yeah, you don't really need soil. You kind of need soil to grow outside usually. Anyway, that's debatable. Technology is ever advancing, to the point that we almost don't need soil. But the point is, the typical farm is nowadays, most, like in Indiana, most farms are growing fuel, period, meth or ethanol for corn. That's the crop of choice a lot of the times because it pays well. So your food has to travel for plenty of reasons. Maybe it's not conducive to grow it. It's not financially productive to grow broccoli unless you can spray it with a bunch of additives like GMO and stuff like this, pesticides, all these things to make sure you get the maximum profit out of that kind of a crop. So this is another reason why it's good to have things local. The closer things are, the less they have to travel. There's no reason for preservatives. There's no reason to take all these extra chemical measures to keep the food a certain way, because it has to go through this long transportation process, which, like I said, is lengthy and expensive. Man, apologies for this, folks. I'm really distracted tonight. Like I said, got some personal shit going on. Happened right before I was supposed to start this show, so mind's a little preoccupied. Anyway, so grants. We're gonna talk about some grants and some different parts of the United States Department of Agriculture. So you have your National Resources Conservation Service. They offer technical support, a few other things. Specifically, though, irrigation, water efficiency, high tunnels, which are your huge hoop houses, things of this nature. They offer funding. Grants, things of this nature. They're conservation. So they want to help you. They want to promote this urban agriculture idea because they understand how much it's a necessity. Anyway, they got a lot of stuff that they're pretty cool office. They have a program called Equip, which is environmental quality incentive program, I believe. It's pretty awesome. I'm going to keep these kind of short. Then you have the USDA's Farmers Service Agency, the FSA. They offer grants as well as technical assistance. Some of their funding goes for things like the farm storage facilities, cold storage, wash and pack. They also do microloans up to $50,000. Then you have the USDA's Agricultural Marketing Service. They have a specialty crop block grant program, which is specialty crop is essentially your basic fruit and nut trees and vegetables, medicinal as well as cooking herbs, all kinds of things. There is a list of non-eligible commodities. These are things like wheat, rye, corn, soybean, hemp, sunflowers, and a range of other things. But basically your fruits, nuts, and vegetables, most of that's on your specialty crop list. Peanuts are not. Anyway, they also have funds for equipment purchases. They also have what's known as a farmers market and local foods promotion program. This is for establishing and expanding local food hubs. Anyway, then moving along, you have the USDA's Rural Development Office. They have what's known as a value-added producer program. They offer grants to that. That's your non-GMO, organic, etc. So it's known as a value-added producer. They also have a grant for community facilities to purchase, construct, and/or improve essential community facilities purchase equipment and pay related project expenses. Got a couple more details on that here. Community-based nonprofit corporations are eligible. This is for communities with less than 20,000 residents, so smaller towns, which may have a little more difficulty implementing something like this. It's for local food systems such as community gardens, food pantries, community kitchens, food banks, food hubs, or greenhouses. Low interest direct loans or grants or combination of both. They give priority to communities with a population of less than 5,500 people or low-income communities having a median household income less than 80% of the state's non-metropolitan median household income. So that's per your state. These are federal. So it varies state to state. They also have the Rural Business Development Grant. This is also nonprofit eligible. This is for communities with less than 50,000 people. It's anywhere from $10,000 to $500,000. There is no cost share. However, anything that's covered under the opportunity grant portion, only 10% of the total rural business development grant proceeds or funds could be eligible for that opportunity grant use. Some of the things that these funds can be used for are training and technical assistance, such as project planning, business counseling training, market research, feasibility studies, professional technical reports, yada yada. Acquisition or development of land, easements or right-of-ways, construction, conversion, renovation of buildings, plants, machinery, equipment. There's a list of stuff here. I'm just kind of trying to highlight. Long-term business, strategic planning. This is part of the opportunity grants. Rural business incubators, leadership and entrepreneur training, feasibility studies and business plans, technology-based economic development, and community economic development. The application is evaluated based upon evidence showing job creation at the local business level, the percentage of non-federal funding committed to the project, the experience of the grantee, the economic need in the area, and the consistency with the local economic development's priorities. All right, so moving along. USDA also has the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education sort of branch, I guess. Just about anything into research and education with urban agriculture, you can get grants or funding through this office with, or this office for. They also offer funding for season extension. That's high tunnels, greenhouses, hoop houses. This could be applied to anything. The season extension is sort of debatable, being that they're based upon research and education. I think they'd be pretty open-minded. I've looked at a lot of the other projects that they sort of approved. You get your rocket mass heaters, anything that you could do to sort of create a false climate to grow food longer, you could pretty much get funding for. They've also got funding for on-farm sustainable energy. That's solar, wind, micro hydro, anything that's gonna, be in that wheelhouse as far as sustainable energy. Like I said, all these things are also applicable to urban farms, not just you're out in the country, large farm. This could be something as small as a third of an acre, a quarter of an acre. most of these things are, they're with the urban agriculture movement. They're very well aware that this is happening and that it needs to be sort of incubated with funding and programs and incentives and opportunities. So, most of these places, at least all the stuff that I'm covering tonight, is urban agriculture, urban areas, as well as your typical rural agriculture sort of operation. Anyway, so moving along, we've got USDA's got a REAP program as well, REAP. They also have assistance and grant opportunities for on-farm sustainable energy. The EPA has brownfield grants for remediation and testing of soil. UMass Amherst, UMASS hyphen AMHERST, University of Massachusetts. They pretty much are the cheapest, best place, from what I can tell, to get soil and plant tissue testing. They have a lab there. It's highly recommended. Also have insurance. So you have your whole farm revenue protection, WFRP. They offer, this is through the USDA as well. They offer insurance for urban and rural farms for, this is everything that you're doing, specialty crops included, organic, everything. Insurance up to $8.5 million. And there's essentially no farm that's too small, from what I can tell. What else do we got going on here? So, somebody always likes to hear the bird clock. It's Baltimore Oriole o'clock. Anyway, so what do we got going on in the chat? Change the time every now and then so we can hear different birds. Maybe I'll switch the clock out. I got another one that's got other birds on it. But I don't know, man. That's how I know what time it is. I can like I know certain birds are certain key times of the day. So let's switch them. Be all messed up around here. True. Yeah, you guys usually get the tufted titmouse at 10 and the Baltimore Oriole at 11. However, I am probably going to be thinking about doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Monday, Friday shows. Monday, I'm probably thinking it'll be a little bit earlier. We're not going to do 9 o'clock. Not really sure. Probably about 5, maybe 7. Anyway, so you get what? You'll get a. Let's see. If I do it at 5, you get a house rent at 6. If I do it at 7, you'll get a song sparrow at 8. Either one of those are really interesting. If I did it at 1 o'clock, you'd get a black cap chickadee at 2. That's one of my favorites. If I did an 8 p.m., we'd get a belted kingfisher at 9 p.m. That's how we determine show times, what bird makes what sound. I'll leave it to anything else. You guys keep it interesting. But yeah. I think I'm gonna wrap this one up, guys. Like I said, we're just keeping it light. Kind of glad I had that intention tonight as well. I gotta deal with some stuff after this. Tired. I was up early as shit today. But to the mods, thank you. To my audience, thank you guys. Sort of not our usual, but something to do tonight. Wasn't really trying to get too serious. Needed a break from the constant legalities, but informative. Yep, it's it's always good to do something a little lighter every once in a while. Can't be too serious. And like I said, gardening is a very calming thing. What is it? I read a very interesting quote. As I work on the garden works on me. Oftentimes, life can stress you out. The garden's a good place to sort of shed all of that. Just falls right off into the dirt. Don't know what happens to it after that. But it's a good place to, de-stress, alleviate some of life's everyday sort of bullshit. Take your mind off of it. That's why it's a good thing to have these around. Community gardens are a wonderful concept to, meet new people, meet your neighbors, share ideas with each other in a sort of relaxed, informal atmosphere. You're also, sort of creating something. You're helping raise a garden, which is essentially, a bunch of plants. These are, it's another essentially life thing that you're caring for. It's a very intimate thing when you grow your own food. Your food tastes better, smells better. It's something very personal about it. It's very intimate to eat food that you've grown yourself. I don't know how to describe it essentially, other than it's no different than anything else. Craftsmen understand this probably more than anybody. You build something, you take the time to construct or fabricate something. When it's done, you sort of take a moment to sit back and appreciate what you've accomplished, what you've put your work into. A garden is like this. It literally bears the fruits of your labor. And there's no better way to appreciate the time and energy, hard work, passion, care that you put into something than a good meal, or fresh herbs, spices, whatever. Like I said, nothing tastes better to me than something that comes right out of my garden. There's no other way to describe it. Knowing that you grew this, you know where your food came from, you know whether it was sprayed with pesticides, you know what methods were used. There's nothing better. But gardening is a community thing. This is something that is, it's fun by yourself. It's fun with a group of people, and it's a sort of a sharing is caring kind of atmosphere. When you help each other do this thing that is so unique, like gardening and growing your own food. It's what you're putting into your body. So when you grow food with another person, you're basically building a level of trust with them. When you cook for someone, similar thing. It's a gesture of trust to eat food someone else has prepared for you. So I don't eat fast food because I don't know who the fuck's making it. But anyway, like I said, keeping it short and light, kind of philosophical, not so serious, but other things are important other than, videotaping police and things like that. Never alone in the garden. Also, nope, you are never alone in the garden. Ever. Even when you think you are. There's always something out there. Be it bugs, birds, squirrels, or the actual plants themselves. Good book called The Secret Life of Plants. Never read it. You should check it out. Yep, worms. It's another thing. Urban agriculture, vermiculture, worm castings. Great for the garden. Expensive. Usually an untapped market. People don't realize how easy it is to generate worm castings. They also are a reduction of solid waste matter. You can feed worms all kinds of stuff. You then don't have to dump it in your garbage. You're able to sort of basically recycle, and a lot of your organic waste you can get rid of with composting and having something as simple as a worm farm that actually generates a couple different byproducts that are great for your garden. Once established, they pretty much take care of themselves. But like I said, it's unknown knowledge, and yep, you can grow them right in the basement. It's pretty neat shit. There's a dude in Valpo that was growing them in his garage. I don't remember what it was, but he had like commercial scale production coming out of his 1.5 car garage. But it's, he just maximized efficiency and utilized the space, best practices. and he took it seriously. Rabbits, yep. Chickens, you know, that's the thing too. If you get into gardening or farming or anything like that, you realize just about everything that shits, aside from humans, has a priceless poo. You know, just chickens, cows, horses, pigs, fish, worms, all these other species. All their waste matter is useful for something. It's gross in a way, but it's the way the world works. Fish poop is essentially what makes seaweed so vibrant and able to thrive. Nitrogen or nitrates, yada yada yada. Nitrogen gets converted into nitrates in the water, and that's what feeds the plants. Simple as that. It's one of the simplest processes that is untapped as far as the real possibilities for it go. But yeah, rabbit poop, chicken poop, fish poop, mix all this stuff together and you basically got perfect soil. Anyway, I'm gonna get off here, guys. I got some stuff to do. I got some stuff to deal with. So thank you all for showing up. Like I said, thanks to the mods, Huckleberry, Civilian, Jenny, Regina, no bullshit, Cindy, everybody. You guys take her easy. Yeah, Cindy, you got a very sandy soil. You got it made though, man. Wild asparagus, wild blueberries. Yep. I'll talk to you guys later. Well, like half of you. I'll talk to you probably tonight or tomorrow. But probably tomorrow. I got some stuff to do. After that, I'm going to bed. It's been a long day. By the way, I met with the one of the guys running for mayor today, so I'll explain that to a few of you. Very, very interesting. Surprisingly, he's on the same page with me about a lot of stuff. So things could be shaking up here locally. We'll see. He's kind of the underdog, but I think they're really underestimating the dude. Anyway, so like I said, I'm good at civilian. We're gonna have a conversation about that. I'll let you know some of the finer details, but pretty interesting. Anyway, night everyone. Thanks for modding, and I'm out. You guys stay safe. Glad you enjoyed it.